Rubie Kolod, who was a longtime casino owner in Vegas. He was born Rubie Kolodidzky in New York City on July 27th, 1910, to Abe and Tessie Kolod. The name was changed. I'm going to pronounce it Kolod, Kolod. I think that's the correct way to pronounce it. He attended high school for 2 years and he quit. In July of 1929, he was arrested in New York City for assault and robbery, and then he was arrested again in August under the name Ruby Cohen for breaking, entering, and assault during the breaking and entering. He was sentenced to 3 years in a reform school in Elmira for that one. That was a hellhole. He escaped from the reform school and he fled to Cleveland. I don't know why, what brought him to Cleveland, but he was arrested in 1929 under the name Ruby Spector as a fugitive from justice. He must have somehow beat that extradition or something because he was arrested a few short months later in early 1932 under the name Jack Lewis on a bootlegging charge. So what we have is the first arrest for the breaking and entering was done in those days under age 21, so I don't think he had a record from that. The bootlegging thing, that was a misdemeanor at best. So he had no criminal record per se, which allowed him to hold his license in Las Vegas. They were fairly strict about that, not allowing felons to hold a record. So it was around this time he started working with Moe Dalitz, who was a local gambler at that point. And he married Esther Seltzer in Ohio in 1932. They bought a nice home in Cleveland Heights, lived there for years. They grew a large family. During World War II, he enlisted in the Army. He was stationed stateside, not far from Ohio. When the war ended, he oversaw the Pettibone Club. Well, he worked in the Pettibone Club from 46 until he left for Vegas probably 1949, early 50. Moe Dalitz, it really was the manager there from 1939 to 49. So he worked for Dalitz. Supposedly, Kolod and George Gordon manage most of the illegal syndicates, the casinos now, for the Cleveland mob from 1930 through the 50s. In 1945, Wilbur Clark used about 1.5 million that he got from the sale of the El Rancho Vegas, a casino in Las Vegas, to build the Desert Inn, to begin building Desert Inn, which he thought would become the fifth casino on the Strip, fifth largest casino on the Strip. Construction began in 1946, the same year Bugsy Siegel opened his Flamingo Hotel. However, in 1947, Clark just ran out of money because post-World War II building materials were really expensive and they were really scarce, and America was booming. There were houses being built everywhere. So Moe Dalitz provided the additional funding, but he got three-quarters interest in the Desert Inn. Dalitz partners in that were Kolod, who moved to Las Vegas in 49, and Morris Kleinman. The Desert Inn opened April 24, 1950, with Kolod having an 8.5% share in it. On paper, George Gordon, who I mentioned just a few sentences ago, Cleveland Hood, he apparently held the remaining ownership of the hotel for mob figures in Cleveland. He was a front man, in other words. He paid him when it was time to pay him. In June of 1959, Robert Sunshine, who was a disbarred lawyer, persuaded Kolod to join him in this oil lease investment scam in Nebraska. Kolod and Willie Ice Pick Alderman, who also had a casino there, paid $78,000 in cash for a joint interest in that. The money that they used, though, was skimmed from the Desert Inn counting room. Just walked in and took $78,000. About 10 grand of that went to pay out one partner to leave the partnership. So the remaining 68,000 was turned over to the Sunshine fella, which he was, as an attorney, was supposed to hold in escrow, pending the transfer of the titles. Well, that that didn't happen. He took the escrow money to pay off encumbrances on the oil properties, which he didn't tell them about. And by October 1960, the escrow money was completely gone. He couldn't account for a lot of it. So Kolod and Alderman, they flew to Sunshine's office in Denver, and they said, we want our money back. We want the full purchase price, either in a lump sum or in oil payments, because Sunshine had given them his personal guarantee they couldn't lose on this deal. He personally guaranteed it. Well, they did lose. So the money never arrived when they returned to Vegas. So Kolod and Alderman began calling him and began threatening him inadvertently several times a month. Well, what they didn't know was the FBI had bugged the phones at the Desert Inn executive offices and was recording all of these conversations and all of these innuendo threats. And they also recorded him talking to mob hit guys in Chicago to come and take care of Sunshine. So in June of 1961, Kolod called Sunshine and told him to give the money that he owed to Kolod's nephew, who'd be attending a dentist convention in nearby Colorado, Boulder, Colorado. The nephew returned empty-handed, and it was at that point that Kolod called Sunshine to tell him that the matter had been discussed with Alderman, and they had decided, quote, to send a lawyer from Chicago to take care of him. On July 6, 1931, the really badass Felix Milwaukee Phil Alderosio and America DiPitio, who was a narcotics dealer, mostly a narcotics dealer, showed up in Sunshine's office. Alderosio had known Kolod and Alderman for 10 years, and a week before the visit to Sunshine in Denver, he'd been a guest at the Desert Inn, and Kolod had paid him $16,600. According to Sunshine, Alderosio introduced himself, sat down and stated, "Ruby sent us, we came here to kill you." So over the next hour, Sunshine talked a fast argument, and he finally Alderosio shut him up. He said, "Look, the only person who can save you right now is Kolod." So they called Kolod, who was at the Concord Hotel up in the Catskill Mountains on vacation in New York, and Alderman was with him. The families were vacationing together. Sunshine was put on the phone, and Kolod told him that, quote, he and Alderman had sent Alderosio to see him, to know that, so that you will understand that there's no way of fooling around, that we mean business. Well, he was given a week to come up with the money. Before Alderosio left, he told Sunshine that if he had to come back for the money, he would kill him, whether he got the money or not. He's a dead man. So in December of 1962, Sunshine was indicted for embezzling funds from one of his clients, Dr. S.W. McClydemans of Denver, and that led to a disbarment, and to Kolod, and to Alderman, and Alderosio, and to DiPitio. Everyone got extorted for extortion of Sunshine. The case ended in 1964 with Kolod being sentenced to a term of 4 years and a fine of $7,500. Alderman got 3 years and fined $5,000. Alderosio was given 4.5 and a fine of $7,500. In early 1965, Kolod managed somehow to get the appeal on the case and to be released. The other three guys weren't, on a $35,000 bond, but the appeal didn't look good. It looked bleak. Then the Nevada Gaming Commission suspended his gaming license in 1965. It was only for a brief time, but he was entered into the black book as well, so he couldn't walk into a casino. But losing his license was permanent. They weren't going to give that back to him. In 1966, in the midst of all this, Howard Hughes rented the casino's entire 2 top floors. And those were normally reserved for high rollers. Hughes said that he'd be staying for 10 days. Checkout time came and went, and Hughes didn't move. So Kolod is furious because New Year's is coming, and in Vegas, that's one of the busy holidays when the suites are all promised to high rollers if they'll come in and spend money. Kolod told Robert Mayu, who was Hughes' chief of staff, he said, "Get the hell out of here, or we'll throw you out in your butt." Those were his words. Mayu said, "Look, it's not my problem, it's your problem. You work it out." Hughes made it to New Year's, but by then, Dalitz and Kolod were furious. They sent a letter to Hughes on the penthouse floor advising him that he was to leave in 48 hours or they would bodily remove him. They got the notice back that said, "Not known at this address." Mayu called the Teamster president, Jimmy Hoffa, and who in turn phoned Kolod and asked that Hughes be allowed to stay. And so they gave him a reprieve. They gave him to stay on the floor. But that went way into the next year when Mayu told his boss that they'd played out their options with the Desert Inn guys. He said, "If you want to sleep in peace, you're damn well going to have to buy this hotel." So Hughes bought the Desert Inn for $13.25 million. During all of this, in 1963, Kolod had suffered a major heart attack, and he was in very bad health. The pending prison term, he was going to go to prison, and being entered into the black book didn't help. He was shamed in a community that he had helped to build. He lent money to the Catholic Church, gave money to the Catholic Church. all sorts of good things he did. He built exercise places for kids, but now he's shamed. He's an extortionist. So he's in very poor health from suffering a heart attack in 1963, and he had a second heart attack in his home in August of 1967 in his living room, and that killed him. There's an odd turn of events in this, that in 1958, Kolod's 22-year-old boy, Daniel, was operating a men's clothing store in the lobby of the desert, and he fell from a speedboat that overturned when it hit a wake on Lake Mead. The body was never found despite searches of helicopters. Kolod paid for a private search, and they brought in divers. The body was just never found. But in the summer of 2022, a drought caused Lake Mead to recede, and a skeleton was found. It was missing its two front teeth. Daniel wore partial dentures and was missing the two front teeth. So if the DNA works out, it looks like they may have found the poor soul and they could bury him properly.